Welcome to those of you who are arriving in the Zoom room. It's nice to see you, and we do love to see you. So if you're able to turn your camera on, please do so. And if you can update your Zoom name so that it includes your name and your school affiliation. We can see that some of you have your Innovation Career Pathways teams in the room, and that is fabulous. So we would love to know where you are Zooming in from. And we will get going with our workshop content in just a minute. We have a lot of great stuff for you today. But we do want to begin with some quick logistics and introductions while folks are getting settled. So this is an event that is part of the partnership between DESE and the Center for Collaborative Education in support of Innovation Career Pathways in Massachusetts. And this MAICP event is for our community of practice, which includes folks who are just exploring pathways, as well as those of you who are in the application cycle and actually getting very close to news about designation right now. And then folks who are designated already and in implementation with your pathways. Everyone is welcome to these events. And these events and the other resources that we provide to the community of practice are free and available to everybody involved in the initiative. So we really want to encourage you to share this information. At this time of year, if you're getting close to designation, your Innovation Career Pathways team may be growing. Please make sure that folks get signed up for our listserv so that they are made aware of upcoming events and learning opportunities and web-based resources. They can do that by sending an email or even putting a message in the chat today. We'll make sure you get signed up to our listserv. So you can turn on closed captioning for this event using Otter. Follow the instructions on the slide to do that. And just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded. We do that so that we can post the recording to our website, and we try to do that within about a week, including the slide deck and other resources will be posted on our website so you can share them with others on your team or watch again. So a few introductions before we dive in. My name's Annie Leonard. I'm the Director of Coaching at CCE, and I'm here with my CCE colleague, Allison, our Director of Systems. Allison's the person that you can message in the chat if you have any technical questions. If you want to get signed up for the listserv, you could message Allison. Please reach out if you need anything to help you access this workshop. I also want to acknowledge the support of two of our former CCE coaches, Corbett and Scarlett, who helped put the content together for this workshop and who many of you have worked with as a co-facilitator of one of your professional learning communities this year. And then I want to pass to my DESE colleague, Jennifer, to introduce herself and any other DESE folks who are in the room.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Very happy to see so many faces. Many of the faces I'm actually seeing in the interview process, which is underway for the current designation cycle. You're so close. Everything is going really well. For those of you I haven't met with, looking forward to meeting with you. But yeah, just really enthusiastic about being here today and look forward to a wonderful workshop. At this point, I don't think that Latoya is here. She will be joining us very shortly. And I think that that's it from the DESE team. I will let you know if anybody else shows up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And just a reminder to folks who are joining us, if you can mute your audio while we're in presentation, we'll ask you to unmute later for the breakouts. And if you can name yourself with the school that you're affiliated with, that helps us out as well. A few other introductions. I think many of you are aware that we have every year an awesome cohort of peer ambassadors who are practitioners in the field that support the learning and development of pathways. And two of this year's peer ambassadors are joining us as co-presenters today. And they are Meredith Erickson from Carver Middle High School and Anne-Marie Strode from Bourne High School. And then Anne-Marie is joined by her colleague, Kim Iannucci, from guidance at Bourne High School. And you'll be hearing a lot more from them shortly. So again, so that we know who's in the room, updating your Zoom name, and then a question for you to ponder and share a response in the chat. The connections question for today is asking you to reflect on what you're thinking right now about what you would look for as measurable or observable evidence of effectiveness and inclusivity in an internship or capstone. So just a checking question to say, what are you thinking now? And that may, your answer to this question may change over the course of the workshop, but we'd love to know what you're thinking right now about this question. So just take a moment to reflect on that and pop responses into the chat. And in a minute, I'll invite our my DESE friends and co-presenters, peer ambassadors to respond to what they're seeing in the chat. But while you're thinking and writing, I'm going to take a minute to review our goals for today's workshop and the agenda. So what we're hoping to do today is help you explore best practices and resources that help you develop strong capstones and internships in your innovation career pathways, whether you're in the design phase or the implementation phase. It's a priority for us to help you advance equity and inclusivity in the work-based learning environments that are part of your pathways. And as always, we want to support building connections across our ICP network. So we're going to do that by wrapping up this welcome introductions and connections phase in just a minute or two, and then moving into sharing some content about effective and inclusive internships and capstones. We'll do that in 3 phases where we talk about some basic definitions, maybe very familiar to some of you, but new information to those of you who are just exploring pathways now. Then we'll focus for a bit on some of the practical concerns like scheduling and logistics. And then lastly, we'll turn our attention to student experiences and outcomes. So an opportunity to think about how students are learning and how we know what they are learning through their capstone or internship. We'll try to wrap that all up by 9:40 so that you can spend about half an hour or more in breakout groups. Those will be facilitated groups with a pretty open format to encourage you to use the resource guide that we've developed and everything that you've heard today to discuss your highest priority questions about internships and capstones. So you can be thinking about that through the content presentation, knowing that you'll have a chance to surface questions and hear from peers in those breakout rooms. We'll come back together for debrief and closing around 10:20. All right. So we're going to go now into some basic definitions. And as we often do, I want to frame the specific definitions of internships and capstones in innovation career pathways around the guiding principles and core characteristics that infuse everything that we do with our pathways. So as those of you who have been working on applications this year are very familiar, the 5 guiding principles: equitable access, enhanced student support, guided academic pathways, effective partnerships, and connection to career are shown here with how they interact and overlap with the core characteristics of innovation career pathways. And I'm showing this now really just as a reminder that this is not a checklist of 11 items. It's really an integrated framework. And of course, when we think about internships and capstones, many of the elements that you see here, the guiding principles and core characteristics, are relevant to your planning and your implementation of internships and capstones. So the DESE defining criteria for internships are shown on this slide. They include a requirement that an internship be at least 100 hours at a work site with a preference for paid experiences. Internships need to use the work-based learning plan as a pre- and post-assessment tool. A staff liaison should be involved in student support. Journal writing or reflection of some form that is reviewed by staff is an element of internships. And a product that is a culminating experience, whether that's a written essay, oral presentation, video, or product in some other form, is also part of the internship design. And DESE asks that the experience be captured with a course code so that it is transcripted and documented for data monitoring at the state level. Jennifer, anything that you want to add to that definition?
No, I think that you did a great job. Thanks, Annie.
So then turning to capstones, when the capstones are also a 100-hour experience that students have outside of the classroom. These often take the form of a research project. It could be a service learning or community partnership project that is in service of student learning and aligned with the industry sector for that pathway. Again, there should be an advisor who participates. Ideally, that's an external partner from the industry sector. And again, there should be an end product for a capstone, which demonstrates that students have met or exceeded the standard defined by the school for that capstone. And it should also have a course code so that it can be transcripted and documented. So with some of those basics in mind, I wanted to invite Jennifer, but also our guest presenters today, Kim and Anne-Marie and Meredith. If there's anything that you would like to say at this point, maybe first just a brief introduction to the specific model that's in place in your school. Before we move on into some questions that we know our audience has about internships and capstones. So just give us the basics to start out, and why don't we begin with Meredith?
Thank you. So we have about 80% of our students that participate in a senior internship each year, give or take. And so we've been able to tweak that structure to accommodate the model elements of an internship and to make sure that we're placing students in relevant work-based opportunities related to their innovation pathway. And so we have a schedule that supports that. I know we'll be talking about that in just a moment. And then supports regarding transportation and the mechanism between the placement and the student and the internship coordinator so that everyone is on the same page. And typically students go for 2 blocks each day, but we have a waterfall rotating schedule. So they end up going 5 out of every 7 days. They can fulfill the time requirement in 1 semester, but it ends up being a year-long internship. So they get closer to 200 hours.
And Meredith, when you say 80% of your seniors, just give us a sense of the size of the number of students participating in internships.
Yeah, between 80 and 100, depending on that cohort of students. So we're a small district and we tend to be vulnerable to enrollment fluctuations. So sometimes we have about 100 students, sometimes we have a few more per grade level. And so it tends to be nestled somewhere between like 75 and 85% of our seniors that participate in interns.
And is there anything happening with capstones at Carver, Meredith?
So for our innovation pathways, we've designated internships as our choice over capstones. But we do actually this year, we've started a capstone opportunity, not to fulfill the requirement, but as a ride alongside of the internship so that students really get kind of a common experience where they're able to solve a real world problem in manufacturing, engineering, technology, work in teams, and they take their experience from conception of an idea to completion of the actual experience. But in terms of fulfilling the requirement for innovation pathways, we do that via the internship.
Thank you. Maybe we can hear more of that when we get into the student experiences and outcomes section. Anne Marie, do you want to tell us the basics of your model in Bourne?
Sure, it's actually not much different than the structure in Carver. We are a little bit smaller of a school at Bourne High School. Our our classes range from 70 to 85 students, roughly. Currently, we have 55 students engaging in the senior internship. Next year, we're really proud to say that 100% of students will be required to do an internship regardless of their participation in a pathway, because we really are standing behind the benefits of a work-based learning experience. Our students are enrolled in a class, an internship class, as well as their outplacement, where we work on real world things. For example, they get their professional resumes completed, they do their LinkedIn profiles, we practice interview skills, we do all of those real world kind of authentic processes to get them ready for what's next. We also use that opportunity to work on college related things, as well as if students are looking to go right into the workplace after high school, we kind of look for jobs for them and that sort of thing. So it's really an all-encompassing program that supports the needs of every single student in the program, with the ability to be able to go out to an internship. Our students go out to their internship once a cycle. We have a 7-drop-2 cycle. When their classes fall at the end of the day, where they're able to leave school early and go to their internship. Some students have a little bit more flexibility just based on their own individual schedules. We're looking to improve that for next year. We definitely want kids out into the workplace more, but we are able to meet that 100-hour threshold with all the things that we have kids doing for our innovation pathways. And I think that our structure is really good. We get a lot of positive feedback from the students, and I think just engaging them in that real world experience is so critical in helping prepare them for what's next, regardless of their path, whether it is college, whether it is career, or whether it's the military. We want to do right by all our students.
That's amazing. Thank you. And you can hear we're already sort of previewing what some of the areas are that we'll be digging into in more depth shortly. So what I'm hearing is that you have program designs that were intended to hit those required designation criteria, and at the same time that you're really engaged in continuous improvement, looking at ways that you can improve student experience and student outcomes by supplementing and updating and improving the way you go about internships and capstones in your schools. So you both gave a little bit of information about scheduling and logistics, and we know that this is a super important area to consider, both because of the practicalities of trying to support high school students in work-based learning, but also that there are really equity concerns that come up around scheduling and logistics. So we're interested in hearing from each of you about the ways that your school has developed schedule flexibility that enables the internship or capstone to be implemented. We're also interested in you going into a little more depth on how students get prepared, whether there's a special course or work with the cohort of students in your pathways to prepare them for things like communicating about their schedule and their experience in a work setting. We know that sometimes questions come up about transportation, about work attire, and about accommodations for students with disabilities in their work settings. And that, of course, student safety is an important concern for schools to keep in mind when setting up these experiences. So these are some of the questions that have come in from folks who registered for this workshop and from past sessions where we've talked about establishing and implementing internships and capstones. So maybe this time we start in Bourne, and I'll invite Anne-Marie and Kim to tell us a little bit about how you address scheduling and logistics there.
Sure. And I want to thank Kim for joining me today. She's our lead guidance counselor here at Bourne High School, and she is the master of the schedule. So I thought it was important to have her here with me. And I think, you know, in Bourne, if I would be honest with the group, you know, our schedule, I'd love to see more time for our students to be engaging in outplacements for their internships. But, you know, there is a barrier to that in terms of working with partners that they're not necessarily taking on a full-time employee. So to have them go every day would be tricky as well. So we're trying to really, when we're talking about scheduling, we're really trying to look at a compromise between the two, you know, our partners and also what students are able to do that way. So right, as I mentioned earlier, right now we have students being able to go to their placement once a week for about 2 to 3 hours. That's at a minimum because they are able to go after school if they're able to as well. And as I mentioned earlier as well, some students have the flexibility within their own schedule to be able to go more often. For example, our education interns go frequently. They get quite a few hours above the 100 hours simply because of the flexibility and the availability to our local schools, and they go to the elementary schools on the same campus. So, but our employers, our partnerships have been really supportive in having the kids come at different times and also allowing them to come after school or even on weekends. So we keep close track of their hours and we make sure that they're able to get everything that they need and have a very positive experience. Next year, and Kim, I don't know if you want to jump in on this, we're looking at extending the schedule or changing it a little bit to accommodate for more time, but like I said, Kim's the schedule.
Yeah, I think we've, you know, we gave the schedule, we have a good shot getting this off the ground, but we're at the point now where, you know, we're going 100% all in next year. And it is important that we reevaluate what that schedule, how that impacts specifically our interns. And then of course that impact that it has on everything else that's happening in the school day. So we are looking to have some more consistency at the end of the day so that there is more time that the interns can get out. And I think, you know, part of that is just having the buy-in of the school and admin and, you know, the whole team that makes those decisions, but also being just flexible and creative in what that time looks like. And I think we're really fortunate to have had the support to make that an actual class as well. Because I think from a scheduling perspective, one of the hurdles when we've had similar programs in the past that weren't as successful is that what do you do with those kids when they're not at their placement? And so having that in school kind of space and person, which is Anne Marie, it's very valuable, and it kind of helps take that like what if out of the equation. We don't have study halls here, so we can't just like dump them in a study hall. So all those logistics, I think we've done a nice job of kind of slowly and methodically working through them to the point now where hopefully we can make a sell on a better schedule for next year.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you're doing that by really keeping this like student experience and student learning front and center, and then
Yes.
working hard to adjust the schedule and build the support that you need to do that with the rest of your staff.
Yeah, I think that if I could just add this one final thing, that the class component has been really key. As the internship facilitator, I see students 4 days a week, and I'm able to conference with them. I'm able to touch base with them. I'm able to work through any issues or concerns that they have. You mentioned students feeling safe in their placement. We're able to do some conflict resolution, if need be. But we're able to talk through a lot of different things that they're exposed to that maybe, that I'm asking them to step up to take care of, which is to communicate with their employer, to manage different things. And that class has been critical in being able to communicate and really engage with students and help foster a really positive experience for them.
I love it. Thank you. Meredith, how about at Carver?
Thank you. And Anne Marie and Kim, thank you for your information about Bourne. I always learn so much from these experiences. So in Carver, we do not have a standalone internship class. I know someone messaged me and asked about that. We have something called Junior Workshop, which is part of our comprehensive guidance curriculum. And so students that indicate through their MyCap experience that they want to take an internship, or the students that are in a pathway that we know will be in an internship, they participate in Junior Workshop. And Junior Workshop does a lot of pre-placement education with them. So they learn how to make a resume or how to build a resume. They practice interviewing skills. We cover things like work-based etiquette and why we don't show up in jammy pants and slippers and that sort of thing to our work-based experience. So a lot of that kind of pre-internship placement norming takes place through our Junior Workshop. It's also an opportunity for our internship coordinator who works in our district 2 days a week to go through and talk about what the expectations are for our internship. So we do have systems of accountability that are kind of baked into the grammar of how we've designed internship. And one of the student accountability pieces is that students actually have like a time card, old school time card, and the internship coordinator has to sign off on that. They have to bring it in and submit it. And it's just one way to say, are you showing up where you're supposed to be on time or before? And are you fulfilling, the expectations of the internship? So even though it feels a little old school, we build some of that in. I agree with Anne Marie and Kim when they talk about students need to be proactive in communicating. We definitely use like a gradual release approach to that. And as they become more familiar with their internship, then we put more of that onus on students, if that makes sense. And then in terms of the schedule, so we have a dedicated block of time for students that are doing interns. It's from 11:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. every day the internship runs. So that's 5 out of every 7 days. And the internship coordinator creates an annual calendar and shares that with each site so that the person on site that is connecting with our intern knows when they're supposed to be coming and that piece is normed as well. So those structural pieces are there. And then in a few minutes, when we get to it, I'll talk a little bit more about student outcomes and how we engage students and workplaces in terms of the deliverables and the feedback loop and that piece.
That sounds great. I mean, we can really hear in the way that you're speaking about the practical side, how influential that is on the experiences and the learning that happen for students. Before we transition into talking more about student outcomes and experiences, I just want to remind everybody that we shared a link in the chat to a resource guide that goes along with this event, and Allison put the link in the chat at 9:11, but maybe you could put it back in there, Allison, in case folks have joined since then. So rather than bombard you with a lot of links every time we mention a resource, what we've done here is compile the resources that we know we're going to mention into one guide. So if you want to open this guide up and take a look while we're talking, that will give you a sense of some of the resources that may help you as you move forward with some of the questions and areas for improvement that may be coming up as you listen to today's workshop. So there are some resources in there that are possibly already familiar to you in terms of the work-based learning plan and the DESE Elements of Model Internship Guide. There are some particular places that I want to point to in two of those resources that are relevant to what we've just been hearing about. One is the ASCA Promising Practices Guide, which is linked in our resource guide, is a place where you can go to learn more about student safety in work-based learning settings. I can point you to page 22 of that guide specifically for information that will just help you consider safety concerns in internships and capstones. And of course, there's lots of great stuff in the Elements of Model Internships program guide. The safety and logistics info in that document is found starting on page 20. So if those are things that you're thinking about with regard to your setting, please take a look at those resources. Also, I've had a couple of questions and messages in the chat about the slides and recording for this workshop. So for those of you who are new to our community of practice, just know that we are recording this workshop, and we will post the workshop along with the slide deck and the resource guide to our website, maicp.org. And everybody will get a follow-up email from me if you registered for the workshop. That will also link to those resources. If you got to this workshop because somebody shared a Zoom link with you, we really encourage you to sign up for our listserv. And again, you can send me an email or you can message Allison in the chat and we will get you onto our listserv. All right, so turning to student experiences and outcomes. Again, we have tried to summarize some of the questions that we know folks are thinking about with regard to capstone and internship design. And those include how you approach pre-assessment and post-assessment of those experiences, how you are handling student reflection through the internship or capstone. You've begun to talk about this, but we would love to hear more about building those relationships with employers and how you are supporting the onboarding, mentoring, and supervision of students in their capstone and internship settings. Always interested in accessible access and inclusive experiences. And that really speaks to the enhanced student support guiding principle, how you're preparing students, all students, for success in the workplace. So why don't we start this time in Carver with Meredith?
Thank you so much. So I know that we spoke about junior workshop just a minute ago, but that is how we work to norm and prepare students for the internship experience. In terms of kind of the flip side of that, how do we work with our placement sites? We run a couple different events with our lead industry partners and sometimes our mass hire representative, both of whom sit on our advisory committee or our advisory board for our innovation pathway. And this particular event that we run, we offered a couple different times because of employers having different schedules, but it's over Zoom, and we invite them to come and talk about what an internship is, how students are prepared, and then some models that may work for the particular placement. And we try to be mindful of the fact that those in attendance may be new to taking an intern, or they may be repeat. So we really want to build a community of practice where there's a fair amount of sharing, and that placement sites can learn from one another. So, and I have a PowerPoint that we use to kind of facilitate that and guide that. If anybody wants that, I'm happy to share it.
If
But
you send it to me,
essentially,
I'll include it, Meredith. That would be awesome. Thank you.
okay. And so essentially, when you hear the word internship, what we recognize from folks that are willing to take interns is there are many different definitions to that. And when we say internship, it may be something completely different from what an employer is looking at. So it's a nice opportunity to norm around that. And some of the things that we make sure that we cover, again, in alignment with the model expectations for internships, as we talk a little bit about performance review and how that is done, and then employability skills or portable skills, transferable skills, however you're couching that, but things like punctuality, the etiquette piece, making sure that that communication is there. So that's a great experience for us, gives us a chance to norm, and also for people to wrap their heads around what it could look like for an intern. We have run into some roadblocks before, which I think is worth mentioning, just so that folks recognize that there are ways to get over those hurdles. We had a situation last year where a local employer actually wanted to set up like very specific interviews, and they had come to a showcase that we ran specifically for placement for internships, where students had, again, I'm going to go old school, but they had profile cards, which were like a business card on steroids. And so as intern placements walked in, they could talk with students, and then they could take the actual card that had the student's name, what the student felt their most desirable skills were in terms of placement, and then a little bit about the projects that they participated in through the course of our innovation pathway and how that primed them for success in the future. And I worked with that group of students prior to the showcase event so that they knew what to expect, but also that they were pretty fluent in terms of talking about their technical gains and also using quality communication skills like eye contact and smiling and active listening and that sort of thing. So from that experience, we had a particular place that said, yeah, we're going to set up interviews at the high school. It will be great. And so students came in super dressed up. It was like a big time experience for them. And they ended up accepting 6 of our 8 interns. 2 months into the summer, they called and said, we're sorry, we can't take any interns. So it became a problem-solving experience between our lead industry partner, who was totally willing to help us problem solve, and our mass hire board, so that we could place students. The students were, a little upset about the experience, but that was also a great educational moment for them to learn about. Sometimes, you apply for a job and then something goes haywire or that sort of thing. So how do we build that resilience and that persistence in those experiences? And then in terms of how we make these experiences accessible, our internship coordinator is great about meeting with each student to really understand if they have any specific needs. And we've also been working with a member of Mass Hire who does not sit on our advisory board, but who's really interested in supporting advanced manufacturing and students with communication disorders or ASD, because the field recognizes that the skills that are needed are sometimes the superpower of students with that particular difference or disability. And so that's been another avenue where we can, focus on equity. So I'm going to turn the time over to Anne Marie and Kim so that Carver doesn't dominate the airtime.
Thanks, Meredith. That was great. That was awesome. I'm gonna take my time to kind of discuss it from really a student lens, maybe. Because I think that, Bourne and Carver have very similar protocols. So I think with regard to, we talked about the internship class that students have. We also have a school to career program where students in grades 9, 10, 11 work through all of the, we have a career readiness class, we have a modern workplace class, and we have a personal finance class. Each are building skills that students can utilize once they get into the culmination of the senior internship. In that process, we're really touching base with students along the way, identifying their future career goals and really tying, having their internship align directly with their future career goals. That's really important. And really finding placements that do that. With regard to evaluation and supervision of this process, we do use the work-based learning tool that is given twice a year to our employers. We go over it with students. We teach it to the students in the beginning of the year. And then midway through the year, our industry partners are given the work-based learning plan to evaluate our interns from their perspective. I then conference with students as a learning experience, right? This isn't a gotcha. This isn't, you're fired from your intern, but this is a way to promote growth and learning in the workplace. Then they are also evaluated at the end of their experience as a way to show growth. And along the way, we're talking about the things that maybe if they didn't rate as high as they wanted to on a certain indicator, we work through that and we learn, because this is all about learning. This is all about a learning experience for students. Our program culminates in a senior showcase where all students present publicly to our community, our local school community, but as well as our town community, where they have it's almost like the science fair without the science, if you can imagine that. So it's a really great opportunity for our students to discuss their experiences with the community at large and really showcase what they have learned through the process. Students are required to do journal entries after each opportunity that they go to. So they keep a running record of journal entries that I provide feedback on. I read them every time they go and I provide feedback and we talk about it. I frequently conference with students. It's just, that class, as I've mentioned before, has become critical in terms of touch points with students and really helping them through this process. The one thing that we're really excited about this year in terms of inclusivity is that we're also working with our ILC program and helping those students get internships. And they will also be part of our senior showcase this year. So
Can you just explain that acronym, ILC?
Sure, intensive learning program. So these are students with significant learning or cognitive disabilities. So we are working, some are nonverbal, and we are working with the instructor in that program to help support those students in their internships, and then they will present alongside our internship students in the showcase. So we are really trying to build this into a full senior experience, regardless of ability. And it's really exciting for us this year.
Anne Marie, that's such a great example both of equitable access and inclusivity, but I think it also really speaks to something I'm hearing both of you reference, which is about how one person cannot do this work alone, and really identifying your assets and your key partners both inside the school and outside the school is so essential, right? So when you talk about an intensive needs program, of course, the work-based learning experiences for a long time have been part of that programming. So how can schools tap into the expertise that's already there in terms of supporting students in work-based learning? And then I know you've both referenced MyCap, and often that is really a way that the innovation career pathways and the school-wide guidance curriculum, and whether it's through advisory or guidance, but thinking about integrating MyCap and pathways. And then Meredith, I know you mentioned an advisory board, and not all innovation career pathways choose to have advisory boards, but they really can be a way for a school-based team to bring in your mass hire partners, employer partners, other supportive community members, even student and family voices continuously into your pathway support. So I want to make sure that Kim has a chance to jump in here. Kim, do you want to speak to anything about student experiences and assessment?
I think everyone's done a very nice job of covering, so I don't want to take too much time, but I was going to mention the MyCap and how important that has been in really like establishing a solid guidance curriculum that supports this whole program. It's just, I've found it very, very helpful.
Absolutely. And this is a good moment for us to mention something. We'll return to this at the end when we're talking about upcoming events, but we will be hosting another convening an in-person event for our entire Innovation Career Pathways Network in collaboration with MyCap. So that will be on the 15th of May. You'll be wanting to watch your emails for the registration details for that. But an example to really look deeply at how schools are integrating MyCap and Innovation Career Pathways. Again, there are some things in our resource guide that are really pertinent to the areas that have just been discussed. There is a resource called Equity in Youth Apprenticeships, produced by an organization called NAEP. And there's a lot of really useful information there about different barriers to access and success in youth apprenticeships. Translates really well to Innovation Career Pathways, even though the guidebook's focus is youth apprenticeships. And again, that ASCA Promising Practices guide has some nice resources on accommodations and self-advocacy for students with disabilities. That starts on page 31 of the ASCA guide. Meredith, I really appreciate you offering to share those slides. I'll put them in our follow-up email. And I just wanted to remind everybody that the Peer Ambassador page of our website has not just profiles and details about two of the folks who are here now, Anne Marie and Meredith, but also links to their program websites. So some of the resources that they are talking about, you can find and just see how they're presenting their pathway programs on their school websites and program websites. And you can find that by linking through the Peer Ambassador page. Our toolkit also has some great resources that have been generously shared by people in this community of practice. Things like MOUs with employers, scope and sequence for pathway programming, including courses and work-based learning experiences. And we encourage you to check out our resource library. And if you use something that was shared by one of today's presenters or that you find, we just ask that you say thank you and give credit to the person who created that and generously shared it. Okay, so we are going to get ready to move into breakouts shortly. I'm imagining that you have a lot of questions in mind, but I will encourage you again to take a look at that resource guide and think, okay, what would I like to check out, or what would I like to ask about when the breakouts open. In the collaborative work that we do in this network, we use these community agreements, which we've adapted from Glenn Singleton's work on Courageous Conversations, because we find that they hold us to a high standard for collaboration that is student-focused and productive, constructive, and effective. So I'd ask you just to take a moment to review these and remind yourself of how important it is that our engagement and our authenticity, that our listening as well as our talking, and staying in an inquiry stance. So thinking in terms of questions that we can share and puzzle through together, really improve our collaboration. So what is going to happen in these breakouts is that you've already got the link to the resource guide and are thinking about questions that you have about your setting. And of course, as you can tell from what our presenters have shared, there is really a lot of uniqueness to every setting. There is no one magic recipe for perfect capstones and internships. So this is an opportunity to consider what you know about your community and your school and raise questions about developing your internships and capstones. So you are going to be invited to join a breakout group. There will be a facilitator in the room, one of the folks who's been presenting today. And the facilitation is going to be light, because really what we want to encourage is open discussion about your internships and capstones. But we will ask you to please use a Padlet, and Allison will put the link to that Padlet. She's already done it, of course. The link to the Padlet is in the chat. And that's a place where we ask you to make a note, whether it's about a question or a great idea that someone shares or a resource that someone shares, so that across the multiple breakout groups, the Padlet serves as a record where we are documenting what's happening, and you'll continue to have access to that and can refer back to it. Hi, everybody. Welcome back from your breakouts. And I can see from the Padlet that there was a lot of great conversation going on, always too short. And there are a lot of great ideas and resources, as well as a lot of questions in the Padlet. So as we're getting ready to wrap up, I would invite you to keep that Padlet tab open. I'm starting to see some answers to questions appear in the right-hand column about capstone and internship questions. So if you have something that you can contribute to help a colleague out with the questions that are posted there, please go in and add that, whether you can do it now or later today. We would love to help folks get advice about moving forward on their questions, and the Padlet is a great way to do that. So as we move into the closing part of the workshop, I do want to just open up space if any of our breakout facilitators want to share an insight or thoughts that came up in your breakout room. Please just go ahead and unmute and do that.
I will, Annie. Our group, we had a really great discussion about MyCap and the working with guidance and how to really incorporate that through the process, and how that culminates into the internship, and how that, and how do we get, the other thing we talked about is how do we get all of those skills necessary? Is it through a class? Is it through other modes to get students ready to engage in an internship? It was a really robust conversation. It was great.
In my group, folks shared the notion of how do you identify industry partners and then keep the momentum going if you don't have students who are ready to go into internship yet. So ways to kind of build that over the course of your scope and sequence and your progression over a couple of years. And then also, we ended on a great practical note where someone shared an opportunity to support students who may have low confidence, and how to support them and be a relational bridge so that they can connect and start to bond with an internship site or a person in an internship.
Really cool, Meredith. I'd be very curious to learn more about that. Our group was particularly interested in, well, obviously, virtual internships came up. What do they look like? We had a member of our group who actually is working with the Work-Based Learning Alliance, who can offer paid internships. And sort of on the flip side, when we talk about paid internships, and I also saw this noted in the question section, for our students who are undocumented, how does that work? So really is a huge question and involves, policy obviously at levels that are beyond us here. Also, a question came up about the age 18 barrier, like for students who are under 18, particularly for our manufacturing partners, what sort of opportunities might exist for the younger students. Question about employer partners or employees work mostly from home. Like, how can that work? And then got a great example from Lennox of leveraging your parents. You actually have parent career partners. So thinking about the assets that already exist, within your schools. So great conversation. And yeah, lots of questions generated.
That's terrific. And since you mentioned Lennox, and I've got the upcoming events on the screen, I'll say that we will have MassHire Berkshire and Lennox guest presenters at our Welcoming New Designees workshop on the 10th of April. So if you want to register for that while you're thinking about it, we will put the link for the registration page on our website into the chat. And the April 10th workshop is posted now, and not yet, but soon we will be inviting you to register for the in-person convening that I mentioned, where we will be bringing together folks who work on MyCap and Innovation Career Pathways at a location to be determined, but the day and time is set. That's the 15th of May in the morning. And this event last year was a huge success. I think we had several hundred people in the room and amazing dialogue. So we hope that many of you will be able to join us for that. Latoya, did you want to say anything about your room?
Yeah, we had a really robust conversation, mostly around how to get to those 100 hours. People were kind of discussing, I love using the term innovative ways, but innovative ways to get to those 100 work-based learning hours for students, discussions of bringing in industry people into the schools, running workshops. What was shared at the very end, and a shout out to Hayes. I think Hayes had to run to actually teach a class, but it was shared about a summer boot camp where they bring in industry folks that teach based off of whatever their background is. So there was a mention of a DEI workshop for someone who worked within a certain industry and being able to bring that aspect, or talking about social impacts of entrepreneurship. And so talking about how it helps the students get some of their hours, their work-based learning hours over the summer, because it's very much based off of a capstone model. But also it gets kids to keep coming back because the topics change. So it was great to kind of hear different ways that people are dealing with getting to the 100 hours. And we also discussed reaching out to different ways to pay for transportation. So either using the grant to get licenses to be minibus drivers, or even looking into pairing up with your athletic department and possibly seeing if you can work out transportation that way. That was some of the things that were discussed in our group. So
that is terrific. Thank you all, facilitation team, presentation team. I appreciate you. And to conclude, as we always do, we want to ask you to fill out a survey about your experience today. We really rely on the feedback we get from attendees to plan our future workshops and improve our offerings. And I will remind you again in a follow-up email about completing this survey. Also, as an incentive, we do hold a raffle. So the surveys are anonymous, but after you complete it, you will be invited to enter your email, and that enters you in a raffle drawing at the end of the year with prizes, which every time you complete a survey, you get another entry in that raffle. So I've got 10:28 on the clock, and I would love it if you would just open up that that survey right now and get started on it. Again, the Padlet will remain open, and that's a place that we encourage you to continue to refer to post questions and post answers. This is an exciting time of year when we're getting ready to hear the news about new designees and the expansion of our Innovation Career Pathways community. So we will look forward to being together virtually with many of you on the 10th of April and hopefully in person on the 15th of May. Again, if you have colleagues who you shared this, the link for this event, we would love to get them added to our listserv so that they receive information via email. With that, we will get ready to close out for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your efforts on behalf of your students and their Innovation Career Pathways. Have a great day.